Whenever we think of a perfect steak, we always picture a fully crusted surface, slightly crunchy, paired with a perfect even edge-to-edge medium rare doneness. I mean, wow, that's what makes steaks taste better than any other food. But let's be honest, most people are not getting these results. So the goal is to always simplify the process as much as possible so we can easily achieve perfect steaks. And if there's one steak in particular that makes it so much harder to reach true steak perfection, it's a T-bone or porterhouse steak. So if you're not a pro yet, I definitely recommend avoiding it, and here's why. In my steak educational community with more than 200,000 steak lovers, I have unfortunately seen so many poorly prepared T-bones. And believe me when I say it's mostly the steak's fault. You will understand why in a minute, but if you still decide to cook one of these, stick till the end, because I will reveal my secrets on how to grill it perfectly every single time. As I mentioned, we want a fully crusted surface. If you watched our last video where I dive deep into creating that perfect crust, you already know that among all other things, we need high heat and full contact with the grill. But here's the issue. The bone often gets in the way of that steak fully touching the grill grates, meaning the part next to the bone won't sear properly. This drives me crazy, especially when a butcher hasn't cut it carefully. 3 years ago I started a private steak dining company in my region of Croatia, and for this very reason I rarely cooked porterhouse steaks for my clients. Often the butcher didn't cut it properly, and since I wanted to deliver the best possible results to my clients every time, there was no need to risk it, and I used other boning steaks where achieving steak perfection is easier. But get this, the bone brings one more big problem besides searing, and it is getting an even doneness throughout the whole steak. The meat just next to the bone will cook the least, meaning it will take longer to achieve the same doneness on the whole steak. Which brings us to another problem, and it is cooking both masses to the same doneness at the same time. The problem gets even bigger when you have a T-bone, because the fillet is smaller, making it easier to overcook before the strip side is done. Right now I'm using a beautiful porterhouse steak. Can you guess the steak type? If you maybe thought it's Wagyu, I get it. I also thought it could be Wagyu, but actually this steak comes from 30 months old Croatian Simmental heifers, grain finished and 42 days dry aged. So this is absolutely beautiful. We need to always appreciate the amazing steaks we have. Another important aspect is the thickness. This is the minimal thickness I'd use. Otherwise we risk overcooking the steak before creating an amazing crust. Let me now show you how to grill this beautiful porterhouse like a pro. Let's first prepare the grill. You should always clean your grill grates when it's hot, because then it cleans much easier. Again, always dry the surface on both sides of your steak. Black pepper, nice even seasoning on the whole steak, on both sides. You can also use salt. I personally don't use salt before I cook my steaks because I use finished salt. I like the texture much more. As you can see, perfectly seasoned on both sides. We have a hot side, clean grill, perfectly dry and seasoned steak. And now we start with creating the crust. Full contact always. Now, especially on this part where it's really hard to get the crust, you need to make sure the whole surface is touching the grill grates. Also, with the porterhouse steak, it's maybe better to flip it more often than to rotate, because then the steak is much more looser and it's easier to actually get that part next to the bone to get it crust. Okay guys, as you can see, we are not quite there yet. We just rotated the steak 2 times and the steak has been searing for about 1 minute. That's why it's so important to have high heat, the right equipment and the right steak. As you can see, already a pretty decent caramelization. Again, the goal is to get a whole crusted surface as fast as possible. Also, take a look at the smoke and you can also hear it. You need that smoke and that sound, because then you know we have the right temperature. As you can see, not the best crust, but it was just the first flip. We have a really good crust on the fillet, and now we have to work on getting the crust also here. We flip, contact with the grill, and now we wait to get that crust. I wish you could smell it. The smell is truly spectacular. Also, if you had a thicker steak, it would be even easier to get a better crust. Also, the thicker the steak, the more the steak itself is having better contact with the grill grates. Almost getting there, almost getting there. If you're maybe thinking, why is Ivan pushing the steak so much? Actually, you can do it because it's still raw. If the steak is raw, you can push it as much as you want. You won't push any juices out because it's still raw. Basically, the goal is to rotate your steak until you have a whole crusty surface if you use a grill like that. Okay, so now we have created a great crust on both sides. But still, if you can see, here it's still missing, but it's actually pretty impossible to get this part seared as well. Here we also have luck that our fillet side got a pretty nice crust as well. This is actually a pretty good cut steak, and now as you can see, you can check the other side, also a pretty solid crust. Actually, the other side has a better crust, this one, and this will be our presentation side. Okay guys, problem one is solved. We got an amazing crust, and the only reason why I let it off the grill is because actually, as you can see, this steak is really thin. I would highly recommend you to go thicker if you're gonna use a porterhouse steak. And if there was, let's say, a scenario, if I just couldn't get a good crust, it's much better to take your steak, slice it off the bones and cook it as two separate steaks. Because it's much better to have properly seared both steaks, cooked evenly, edge to edge medium rare, off the bone, than to have them, let's say, with a poor crust and not so even on the bone, believe me. Okay, now we know that because of the bone, this part next to the bone cooks the slowest. Now we need to heat up the bone. And also guys, we know that the fillet will cook faster than the strip. So now, since we have created a good crust, we're gonna actually place the fillet on the side where there's more heat. Because then we're gonna have a normal cooking process for the strip side, but we're gonna place the fillet where it's really low heat, so we're gonna actually slow down the cooking process of the fillet side. So the goal is that in the end, they meet in the middle. So we slow the process for the fillet and have the normal process for the strip side. You can also leave it here on the bone for like 2 to 3 minutes. This steak is not that thick, so I'm gonna leave it for like 2 minutes. Okay guys, now the bone is heated and we can slightly sear the fat cap. And before we place the steak on the gentle side, let's just quickly add a bit more crust. Since I took the steak out for a few minutes and now it was on the bone and just the fat cap, the inside is not that hot. So now we also have a bit more time to get that crust. If you can remember, here we didn't have much crust on the side that's now facing the grill grates. And now what you can do is help yourself with tongs, and we need that contact to get that crust. Again, it's still raw. This is what we want. Also guys, one important aspect, we don't have flare-ups. If you would have flare-ups, yes, you can sear it for a few seconds, but if you have too much flare-ups, your steak can have that burnt oily taste. Really perfect crust except for this, but we can say perfect on both sides. And for this thickness, this steak, this is the hardest thing you can get. Wow, I wish you could smell it. Crunchy, texture, full of flavor, this is amazing. Now we're gonna finish cooking it on the more gentle side. So So now actually the temperature is too low because when I placed my steak on the grill, there was just a slight sizzle. I want it to be not as nearly as hard as this one, but I will show you, you still need to hear it a little bit. Okay guys, now the goal is to continue to cooking the strip side while slowing down the cooking process of the fillet side. As you can see, first it's thinner, it's smaller, and it cooks faster. So we're gonna place the fillet where it's almost nothing underneath, while here on the strip side we have some charcoal. Also, if you see that your fillet side is starting to overcook, what you can do is take it off the bone and leave it somewhere warm, and then before slicing you can quickly sear it again, so we have that warmness and also that crispness on the crust, because it's again better to have the fillet side off the bone and have it perfectly cooked than to have it on the bone and maybe being overcooked. As you can see, both sides, amazing crust. I like the crust even better on this side, so I'm gonna make it that this side will be my presentation side once we start slicing our steak. Now we flip and do the same thing. Okay, I can feel my steak is getting done. Now, I told you that this will be my presentation side, so I will take this steak, quickly sear it again. Okay guys, my steak is now ready. As you can see, amazing crust. We're gonna let it rest, and then I will show you how the inside will look like. Wow, I wish you could smell it. Now the moment of truth. Let's see how we cook this amazing porterhouse. First, sharp knife. Be careful to not touch the bone, especially if you have a Japanese knife, because they are so hard, and the harder it is, the easier it breaks if you touch something really tough. Okay guys, now crunchy crust, edge to edge medium rare doneness, salt flakes, extra virgin olive oil from Istria, which is actually the best in the world. Now let's try it. Wow, you can feel the dry edginess, the beautiful marbling, the salt, the olive oil, the crust, the charcoal. I'm telling you guys, truly steak perfection. So now my little brother's gonna try it. No?
Thank you. Juicy, crunchy, best flavor.
So guys, actually, you saw that we had a porterhouse steak that was pretty thin, not that thick. Even though it is the hardest steak to nail, with the right knowledge and the right approach, you can achieve steak perfection with any steak. So if you feel confident, go ahead, give it a try. And let me know in the comments how your porterhouse or any steak turned out. Don't forget to like, subscribe and hit the bell so you never miss a tip on becoming a true steak master.